Yo, what's going on, Headliner Nation? It's your boy, The Doc, and we are back with another Dynasty Headliner video. This week, it's all about sleepers, specifically at the tight end position. Let's jump into it. Before we jump into the names, let's talk about some things that we need to go over specific to the tight end position. First things first, tight ends can be very hard to predict, arguably the hardest position to identify on who will break out and who won't. But there are some key factors that I found that we could consider when looking at historical benchmarks. First up, draft capital matters, but tight end hit rates are better through the first 4 rounds than wide receiver and running back. Tight ends drafted in the first round manage at least one top 12 season in fantasy at a staggering 89% historically, compared to 44% in round 2 and around 20% for tight ends drafted in rounds 3 and 4. Tight ends drafted in the first 3 rounds average over 3.5 top 12 seasons in fantasy during their career. So draft capital definitely matters for the tight end. The other thing that matters is the age of the tight end. Tight ends do typically take longer to develop. Most won't break out until their age 25 season. Both Travis Kelce and George Kittle actually broke out at age 25. So that is another indication that someone's about to break out. The problem is only 27% of tight ends break out after age 26, and nearly 90% of tight ends break out by their 5th season if they are going to do so. So they either hit early or they just don't hit at all. So it's a very weird position when we're looking at historical data about who is going to break out and who is not. We need them before their 3rd season to really maximize on their fantasy value. We need them to have high draft capital, but we don't want to wait too long on them because they are more likely to fail the longer they go. Now, the other thing that matters is situation. 87% of tight ends break out with the team that drafted them. So we don't want guys that are switching teams, even though we like to pick up guys that switch teams because we think they'll have more opportunity. Typically, the tight ends that break out do so on the team that drafted them. Situation and investment have a huge implication when it comes to the tight end position, and specifically tight ends that actually break out. So we don't want to be looking for tight ends that are changing teams as a way or an indicator that they're going to now break out and have an amazing year. Top tight ends almost always carry more target shares and are used primarily as receiving backs as well in the offenses that they are in. We don't want dudes that are blocking. Historically, top tight ends in fantasy almost never block, and if they do, it's used very, very sparingly. So we don't want them necessarily to be a great blocker. All right, so we know a little bit of the historical data, but let's look specifically at 2024. I know that predicting tight ends can be challenging, so I wanted to look and create what I consider a prototype for the player that we are looking for when it comes to a breakout season at the tight end position. So I went back to the top 5 tight ends of 2024 and looked at some key metrics that we're going to use throughout this video to compare the breakouts to. Now, the one thing I noticed right away is that all of the top 5 tight ends from last year had early draft capital. 4 of the 5 were picked in the first 3 rounds, and nobody was picked outside of the 5th round. That would be George Kittle. Now, they also have elite athleticism. All 5 ran faster than a 4.66 40 time, which is 81st percentile among tight ends. So you have to be an elite athlete to be an elite fantasy producer. And the other thing I noticed, tons of volume and opportunity in their offense. They had a staggering 24.3% target share in their offenses. They were a main component of the offense. The other thing is they ran a ton of routes, 445 on average, which is significantly higher than the average tight end in the NFL. And they participated in over 75% of the routes that they could have run. So they weren't blocking a whole lot. So with all of that in mind, let's take a look at the candidates for sleepers in 2025. First guy we're going to talk about, Brenton Strange with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I think once more people start talking about Brenton Strange, his ADP is going to shoot up. Currently, he's being drafted as the tight end 35 in Dynasty. He's got perhaps the best potential, though, of everybody on this list to pay off immediately at his ADP. Strange isn't as fast as that prototype top 5 tight end that I looked at from last year, but he did have the draft capital going in the second round and has more potential than almost anybody in the league to take a huge jump in terms of his volume. Evan Ingram is no longer in the picture, and the team's already invested in Strange being the next guy up for them at the tight end position. He should immediately step into a tight end 1 rep role this season. And if you combine Strange's volume from last season with Evan Ingram's from last season, you actually see that he hits nearly every major category that we're looking for in a top 5 tight end. He'd have 117 targets, a 25% target share, 72% snap share, and over 400 routes run. And when you take his fantasy points per target from last year and combine that with that potential volume taking over for Evan Ingram, he would score over 200 PPR points, which would have put him as the tight end 5 on the year last year. So to me, if you're trying to swing for the fences at the tight end position, you can't do better than Brenton Strange in 2025. The next guy we're going to talk about is Theo Johnson with the New York Giants. Now, Johnson has a different case than Brenton Strange. Strange has a clear path to more volume next year, while Johnson's going to have to earn his because Malik Neighbors is the alpha in this offense. He's not going away. Johnson's going to have to carve a role in the offense somehow. But the good news is he does have that prototypical athletic profile that we're looking for top 5 tight ends, and he has an opportunity to grow in the offense. He ran an almost perfect 40 time based on last year's top 5 at 4.57, and he's also on the field already all of the time. He had an 84% snap share last year, which is above the benchmark that we're looking for in top 5 tight ends. He ran 320 routes last season, which was very impressive, a 70% route run percentage, which is also very, very good. He's running routes. The problem is the quarterback just never really threw him the ball. And you can't say that he wasn't open either. He averaged 2.26 yards of separation when targeted, which was top 12 at the tight end position last year. Now, Johnson may not have the statistics to back up his role in the offense yet, but he has a role in the offense. He just has to get the ball thrown to him. And if he can get an upgrade at the quarterback position, the team game planning for Malik Neighbors may actually be a good thing for him because he won't have the same type of defensive attention that most top tight ends do in the league. So there's a chance that he could open up his role and become the number 2 target on a team that is desperate for playmakers, and they may have already found one in Theo Johnson. He's for sure a guy that I'm looking to target early and often in my dynasty drafts as my tight end 2 or tight end 3, hoping that he can capitalize on this opportunity and his athletic profile. Before we get into the last player on this list, I want to thank our friends over at Turtle Beach for sponsoring this video. If you guys haven't checked out the new Turtle Beach Stealth 700 series headphones, what are you waiting for? The thing I love about them is that you can seamlessly transition from multiple platforms of games just by flipping a switch on the headset. You can play on your PC and your PS4. You can run your phone and your PC at the same time, which I love because sometimes I'm taking calls and I want to be able to talk on the phone while I'm playing a game. And I love that you can connect the headset to multiple things at the same time. And if that's something you would be interested in, make sure you head on over to turtlebeach.com and use the code headliners for 10% off of your first purchase. Again, 10% off your first purchase at turtlebeach.com when you use the code headliners. Again, want to thank Turtle Beach for sponsoring this video. Last guy we're going to talk about today is Isaiah Likely with the Ravens. Now, it is kind of sad that the Ravens 2024 season was bookended by 2 bad tight end plays. We saw Isaiah Likely's toe go out of bounds in what would have been a game-tying catch against the Chiefs in week 1, and then a drop pass from Mark Andrews in the playoffs to end their season. Not exactly what you want to see if you're a Ravens fan, but I'm not a Ravens fan, so I don't feel too bad for you guys. Now, besides me being a Steelers fan and being a little biased against the Ravens, I do like Isaiah Likely's profile, though I am a little skeptical of his 40 time being listed at 4.82 at his pro day. I just think he moves a lot better than that. He's way more athletic, and he gets open at a higher clip than what that athleticism score would indicate. He had a good burst score, so I can't say that he's not a good athlete, and he just doesn't look like he's moving that slow when you watch him run routes. So I'm not exactly sure what happened there. Maybe he's just not a track star. Sometimes guys that are that big just can't really move in a straight line that efficiently, but that's beside the point, because that was 2 years ago, and Isaiah Likely has proven that he has Lamar Jackson's trust and he can score for your fantasy team. Now, it is a shame that I feel like his growth has been stunted a bit by the presence of Mark Andrews, but Mark Andrews is heading into a contract year and could possibly be on the move if they can't get a long-term deal done, and he wants to be moved off of the Ravens. You could tell there was a little bit of tension between the team and him at the end of the year with that drop, and so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Isaiah Likely step into a bigger role this season, with the anticipation that Mark Andrews won't be there after this year. Likely was 5th in target separation last season. He was 8th in fantasy points per target when he was getting the volume. So when they threw him the ball, he actually was very efficient at scoring when he got opportunities. And Lamar Jackson should like throwing him the ball too, because he was 4th among all tight ends in quarterback rating per target. So when Lamar Jackson threw him the ball, good things tend to happen. Now, he is perhaps the most expensive player on this list from a draft capital perspective, but he's also primed to take a big leap in his 3rd season in the NFL. And if he can turn this tight end room into more of a 1A, 1B situation with Mark Andrews, he could potentially pay off as soon as 2025 for your fantasy team. That's all I got for you this week. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. And we've got a lot of draft content heading your way over the next month or so. So make sure that you are subscribed and turn those notifications on for all the videos from the fantasy headliners. If there's anybody that you like at the tight end position this year that I didn't mention, let me know in the comments down below. I like to have conversations with you guys down there, and I appreciate your input. But that's all I've got, and we will see you next time.
Analytics off the chain, all the channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game.